Here we are approaching the Hugelkulture bed area, and there's going to be some more changes in this area. As you can see, there were many additions from my very first Hugelkulture bed. This is an additional one that one of my workaways produced from breaking up areas. This was also a later addition to fill in the gap. This was my very first ever Hugelkulture bed that I made, and they continue way down the line. I'll put some links below to show you my Hugelkulture beds. But what I'm showing you today is, I don't know how well you can see, but if you look along the actual fence, you will see lots of blue ties along there, such as here. Now there are a few with blue and black ties, but mostly just blue ties all the way down the whole fence line. What does this mean? Well, this is something that we're going to continue with, something we started, but Mike doesn't have time to do all of it right now, so I need markers in place to show me the places he will eventually get to. Let me show you what I mean if you haven't caught up with my Hugelkulture area. Now you will see they kind of spread out eventually, and I have to repile up and rake up the bits, and the edges just remain blending in to the ground between them. So you lose a lot of the goodness of straw and cardboard, gradually moves away from the main bed. So Mike thought it would be helpful to just use some free pallet wood, not as raised beds, but just as almost edgings, so these aren't as high as a raised bed, and this should help contain some of the areas better. And to add to that, I also want some of them, not all of them. When I have areas like this with net, obviously things like broccoli are going to get higher, so I also want to add some upright vertical slats of wood just at the corners, and maybe one or two in the middle lengths, to actually frame them, not completely, so I can still reach through and access everything, but instead of putting poles up, to actually put wood pallet slats up. So as I say, gapped wide so I can still access them, and maybe one around the top to hold them in place, where I can attach netting rather than trying to hammer poles into our mounting area. I won't be changing this one, which is one of my project tomato areas, because as you can see, I will link the video how I did this. I've made a whole grill system, a matrix, so I never have to stake my tomatoes. So I'm going to keep this one as is. I don't need to protect my tomatoes at all with netting. And obviously from here Mike hasn't done any more, and so I need to know where they're going. These ones aren't too bad, as they were spaced out quite well. Slight adjustments to be made when my growing has finished this year, but as you can see, I've still got a lot of growing going on. But obviously I want to start now adding more to them and start putting stuff around them, so I need to know the edges, hence why I have gone along with him measuring them all, because he likes to have good measurements, and put string on the fence to show the start and finish of each section. So this is why the whole fence, I don't know if you can see, but the whole fence has got blue string. So that's our fence line to empty land beyond us. And yes, that's a sea in the distance. As I say, some of them aren't too bad for where the string is. So I'm standing in the middle back of this one. And the string line is there. And over the bush there. So that one's about right. As I say, this end they're fairly correct. It's just as I get further down, because he wanted them all the same measurement. I know this was a right mess, and that's why I hadn't grown anything in this area, because I knew some had to be joined together. So these two are going to, this one's going to slightly shift towards this pile here, and that will become one. But the others, the ones I started making initially, I haven't grown much in because of the change I want to do, and these were more random and some very big, so these would need to be reduced. As you can see, a great big gap between them. And what we're going to do is where I've got the black string with the blue, that means it's the start of another one, but the black string means they're going to go the opposite direction. So this big one here that was supposed to be pumpkins but ended up being chili peppers for some reason. This one's going to go the other way because I've got a big strawberry tree here, so it would be a bit tight to walk by. And also it means the next ones are basically in the right place. So this one has always been a bit wider than longer, more square almost. So this one's going to go the opposite direction, as is another one further down this way. And also by doing these pallet edges is another good reason, as I say, instead of doing metal stakes to hold netting around the edge, things like this field of broccoli will need netting higher, so it's going to be good to just use pallet wood nailed vertically up. My field of broccoli is coming on, and as I say, that needs to get higher netting, so this will be a good time to do it. This, as I say, was my first ever Hugel bed, and this is going to be another one that instead of going lengthways like the rest, will actually turn and just go this direction instead. And then obviously all what's here, all this that's been collected, will go on other beds this end. Again, we have cauliflowers here that will need higher netting, so again with the edging of the pallet wood and then some vertical slats or planks nailed on at intervals around, it will be much easier to create higher netting. And one more that really needs reducing is this one that the workaway has made out of raked up soil. And so this will be reduced much more, which will save time sorting it out and seeding. So that's a little update on what's happening with the Hugelkultur beds for the next season.